live in about 10 seconds.
You're also.
Do you want to stay tonight still?
We'll stay for a while.
We're gonna
Never.
try to. Watch, it'll be like 4 hours and then it gets awkward because you're
I
like,
might have this town meeting on my first day. So
we've got a good group at,
there's a reason the contractors make money, including what they do, dealing with things like this.
we just have a rule that if you stay tonight still, 9:30. We have a rule you can't leave until 9:30 if you stay. I'm just.
Lindsay, thank goodness you're here. Buzzy's telling a bunch of lies.
I tried. I got outvoted tonight. So there was that in the newsletter? It looks like the date was wrong.
Looks like the dates are wrong.
Oh, shoot. Got flipped. I can honestly say I've never seen that mistake in 4 years, 5 years. So
It's unique.
I blame.
As bad as when we went to the university class, looking to talk to a girl, and found the wrong class, the wrong day.
That was to talk to a girl.
Are we transmitting?
We're live.
Okay.
The wrong stuff.
All right, let's get control of this, Buzzy. Welcome to the January 4th, 2023 North Logan City Council meeting. It looks like, are we missing Joni?
Yeah.
We're excusing Joni tonight, who had a family emergency. We will begin tonight with an opening ceremony. Craig will do the pledge and Roger will be doing the prayer.
Please stand. Repeat pledge with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Father, in heaven, we're grateful for this evening, thankful for the safety we received coming here. Thankful for the city council agenda before us, and ask that we invite Spirit to be with us and make decisions. Truly grateful for the moisture we received so far this winter. Grateful for the blessing that will be on the water needs here in our community and in the state. Please bless those that are less fortunate and need thy help, that we may look for opportunities to serve, especially in our own community, and say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. I'm trying to remember, I don't think we have any minutes to approve tonight, or do we?
We do. They're not in the folder. We'll have to excuse Marie. She's been trying to get home from Colorado for 3 days. I-70 and I-80 have been closed the entire time. So I think by tomorrow she'll make it back.
Okay,
So
so sorry,
about
we
that.
do have do you guys?
They're
feel
not
com-
in the folder though.
do you feel
so just wait till
comfortable-
next week.
Okay, we'll postpone that till next week. Alan, do we have any follow-up issues or action items?
I can just go over the action items really quick. So civic center design process, we'll go over that at the end of the meeting. Just a few of the items there. Garbage RFPs, the interviews went well with the haulers. I think a lot of good feedback was received and a lot of good questions. And great proposals came in, great firms to interview. And we'll go over some staff recognition and training tonight. Water, they'll probably start drilling the next week. They have until the end of January to be done with that. And then we'll start on the actual well house. Sewer, we've gone over several things related to funding options. Even this week, we're looking at federal funding options for the remaining sewer projects we have coming up. Streets. Just heavy equipment repairs right now. Every time you go down there, they're either fixing or they're out plowing in the plow trucks. Kind of an ironic thing this week, and I shouldn't go over each one of these, but I received several emails and questions about what our plow policies were and how we were handling the inundation or the wave of negative phone calls saying like, why aren't you out plowing? The school district was contacting several cities, asking them about why they weren't plowing, what was wrong, how come they weren't responding in time. And they asked me all these questions. I said, how was I responding to the questions? And my response was, what questions? We haven't had any. And in each of these other cities, they had to do like formal posts, go on their website, say how they were coming out. So it's
That's
been an
great.
incredible week this week. Jumping down through here though, stormwater, they're working with a particular pond on 3100 North with Hyde Park. Engineering, we're working on a water line with Kane Gates. And there's some documents that will go back and forth to try to get that set up, part of a larger master plan. And then the measurements for the 12th East appraisals, which are just about done. Parks, they have a full-time position that's open, and it's just tough filling that position with a qualified applicant. They've had a few applicants come in, but we're still looking right now. Trails, we met with the government today, the state government and federal government. There's a lot of federal funding coming in, and Governor Cox is really placing a strong emphasis on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. We're trying to get in and get some funding for our segments in Northland City that are key. Recreation, this last week they were incredibly busy. I think they put too many things in one week. They had the sports sampler, they had the New Year's at noon, and several other sports and tournaments going on. And it was an extremely busy week. And then they'll start basketball this week. So that's up to them. A very busy week. Facilities will go over surplusing items tonight, and kind of the process associated with that. Cemetery, they're working with the canal company to put secondary water going up to the east. We put the wreaths on the graves. It was a great opportunity there on the veterans' graves. Community development, they're very busy. They'll have a full night tomorrow night dealing with moderate income housing, which then will come before the city council right after that. And then you'll see 2 items from planning and what they've been working on tonight. And then in the coming weeks, we'll talk about the RE5 zoning standards related to density and open space in non-buildable areas. Economic development, there's several things going on right now related to businesses that we're attracting. The CRA is becoming a key component to that was approved several months ago. Treasurer, Debbie's had several good ideas regarding how we can reach out to the multi-unit. This month, we'll probably do a few things where we're going to reach out individually to several individuals who, anyone who lives in an area where there's 1 meter. So that's a PUD, a planning unit development. There's apartment complexes. It's a myriad of different locations throughout our city where we need to get in touch with those residents so they're part of the community, and we're able to communicate with them. It's just tough, and so we're thinking of different ways, and hopefully in the next 2 months in the newsletters we'll probably send out a newsletter to every single resident regardless of whether or not they're part of a single meter or a multi-meter. And so hopefully that will help at least get a few of those individuals in contact with the city. Jumping down through human resources, there's several things that will come before the handbook in the coming weeks. Maybe about a month. So you have like travel policies, workday hours, year recognition, several things. You'll see that in the coming weeks. So just a heads up on that. But they are working throughout each of those. And then at the same time, Karen's doing all the W-2s and year-end accounting. Recorder, is working on the Hyde Park Cemetery District. Resolution, and then also the budgets. You'll see a budget revision at the next city council. So Scott's very busy right now getting those prepared and working with each of the different departments. You'll see a little bit more about that tonight with the budget proposal schedule. Library fundraising is coming out, and we'll go over this at the end of the meeting regarding their upcoming fundraising opportunities. And then police, we're working together on code enforcement, nuisance properties, parking issues. And they're reviewing their personnel policies. Fire department, obviously we went over this at the last one, but this is great for the equipment that they received through the grant. And then there's Station 70 progress. But I jumped through those pretty quick unless there's other questions, concerns, comments.
Any from the council? Okay. Do we have a staff member recognition tonight?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I got that. Did I?
I don't
know.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, Marie's the one that takes care of that. The 3 employees are Jeremy Stedman, Keaton, Stuart, and Will Stedman, I think are the 3 that were recognized, and they were part of the plow crew. They had to
Awesome.
come out on the Sunday and then the New Year's Day and several other days throughout the holiday week. And they were recognized by Ryan Campbell for just going above and beyond that week, not really taking any time off.
Yeah,
during
will you
those
pass
days.
along our thanks? I mean, I think people
Yeah.
maybe don't necessarily even notice that until there's an app, like until they fail, but it sounds like they've kind of set the bar high. So
Yes,
I-
very
yeah.
high.
pass along our thank you for that.
Will do.
Okay, then I believe we can start with our action items. We'll start with consideration of an ordinance amending multiple sections of the North Logan Municipal Code intending to clarify both residential and non-residential parking service material requirements. You'll give us some background, Scott?
Yep, so this is a little bit of a cleanup ordinance of our existing language. In chatting with Jordan Oldham, our Public Works Director, he had mentioned this was an item that often is maybe not quite as clear in our code when development is looking at, the language. So what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to clarify that any parking spaces for development needs to be paved, asphalt, or concrete. And we have that language in various places of our code, but it doesn't follow through in every instance that it references parking standards. So we basically went through, found all references of parking requirements and used uniform language in each section. So it wasn't confusing to anybody who was maybe cherry picking in the code for, what is applicable versus what is not. So we went through and just clarified paved asphalt or concrete for all development, or the parking spaces that are required for the development as our code would calculate the quantity. Do you have any questions about the intent or any questions about the nuts and bolts?
No, that makes sense to me, that especially with the short-term rentals, that we wouldn't say, hey, just
Park
paint
on the
a
front.
stripe on your lawn. Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Any other questions from the council? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to amend this ordinance.
I'll take a stab at it. I'll make a motion that we pass the changes made in residential, non-residential parking service material code
Okay,
as outlined.
motion by Roger,
Second.
second by Craig, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. It looks like you're gonna do
hang out,
another
it's
one.
okay.
Consideration of an ordinance amending North Logan Municipal Code, section 12D, intending to establish a subdivision concept plan expiration timeline.
Yep, again, another cleanup item. As you'll notice in our code, if you were to read through the subdivision ordinance top to bottom, there's a couple of steps in the development review process that every development goes through. So you start with a concept plan, kind of a high level conceptual review, then they get into more finite details. They get into the preliminary plat and the development plan. So we get into the nitty gritty of the development itself. And then once we've figured all of that out, we know that they're good to move forward. They produce a final plat, which is then recorded with the county recorder's office. And that's the end of the review process. And that's how we create new lots for development. But in each of those steps of review, there are typically timelines for development to progress from one step to the next. And if they don't progress, the best practice is to have a timeline to say, okay, it's stagnant. We're going to have it expire so we can go back and apply any new regulatory language that may have become applicable to a new application that may be submitted. So what we're looking at here is we're taking the concept plan portion of the development review process for both residential and commercial developments, and we're establishing a timeline for a deadline. We have that already in place for the development plan and preliminary plat, and the final plat, it just is not present currently for the concept phase, the very first phase. So the proposal here is when we receive an application, we won't accept the application unless it's complete and adequate for us to review. We would actually reject the application if it doesn't contain all the detail we need in order to conduct a full review. But if they do submit an application, it is complete and correct. What we're saying in this language is that they have 1 year to receive a concept plan approval. So you have to go to the planning commission for a recommendation and then to the city council for approval of that concept plan. If they have failed to move to that point within a year's time, we would say, okay, this application is no longer valid. You need to resubmit, pay your fees again, and then go through the process. Typically 12 months is plenty of time to do that. After, let's say that they do receive an approval for their concept plan, the proposal is that we give them 18 months to then turn around and submit a preliminary plat and a development plan. And that's quite a bit of time. It goes by very quickly, and there's a lot of detail between concept plan and development plan and preliminary plat. So 18 months seems like quite a bit of time. It's about average for what most municipalities allow. And if they have not received an approval, we would say it expires unless they request an extension from the city council. Typically when, let's say that we have a project that gets to 18 months, they haven't moved forward and they say need an extension. We would come to the city council and we would say, there's no new regulatory language, there's no new requirements. It's probably okay if we allow them to extend because they'd be playing by the same rules if they were to reapply anyways. But it gives us that stopgap, that check in time to say, okay, do we want to allow this to continue to move forward, or do we say this one's expired, go ahead and resubmit? So the nuts and bolts of this is we're establishing those two timelines as applicable to concept plan for both residential and commercial developments.
How often have you experienced that? What would now be a violation of that first one where they submit an application but don't seek approval of a concept plan?
Not very often, but sometimes we have somebody who's kind of dabbling, just kind of testing the waters. They have, I mean, a concept plan is a fairly low hanging fruit to submit for. It's very high level. They don't have to have any engineering or, scaled drawings. They can just be a paper napkin to say, here's my concept. This is the general idea of what I want to achieve with a proposed development. But a lot of times they'll just, they'll test the waters and then they'll just sit on it. They're not quite ready to move forward. They don't have the financing. They don't have the partnerships, whatever they're looking to line up. And so it's nice from an administrative standpoint to say, okay, that was a good discussion, but we don't want it sitting on our desk indefinitely. Let's expire it, put it to the side. And then if they want to resubmit when they get more serious, then they can resubmit.
One question I have, Scott, on this Canyon Gates, their phase of the remaining, I know they would be grandfathered in, but would this apply here? So Canyon Gates' current agreement would be null and void if it was previous to tonight, assuming we'd passed this 15 years ago.
And Scott can probably answer better than I can, but that's a really good example of something in our city where something was approved several years ago at a development plan phase. But they have a development agreement that specifies everything that is approved that carries forward. So regardless, they would be grandfathered in, whether they had that agreement or not. But another example up on the bench, we won't go into specific subdivisions. There were other subdivisions up there that were approved for a large amount of lots up very high on the bench. And if they had been approved and let's say they came in 10 years later and they wanted to just move forward from that concept plan, they're basically vested with a certain number of lots and then they have to move forward. One thing that's really difficult for the city is if the state comes down with certain mandates related to water, related to sewer. And so they have to have certain provisions for fire protection, certain pressures, other things available. That subdivision would not have been able to satisfy any of those new requirements that came down over that 10-year period, which is very common. Every year we get more regulation from the state in water and sewer, roads, access, other things that come down. And even the city has different regulations that come into play. And so, yeah, those are two good examples. Canyon Gates, again, they have a development agreement that basically locks them in as long as they move forward in their current fashion. Now, if they change it like they tried to the last time when they came in, they would start all over and they would have to meet everything exactly how our code states it today. But yeah, that's a good example. But it does provide the city a lot of safety having this expiration point, because then they come in and they basically don't have to abide by state code somehow, and we have to figure that out on the spot.
Okay.
So I had a question too. So you said if they come in with the concept plan, they don't get that within the 12 months, then they got to go back and start basically with a new concept plan.
Yeah, they need to reapply.
Right. They need to reapply. Let's say they get the concept plan, it's approved. Now they're working through the developmental plan and that expires. Does that put them all the way back to the very beginning of so that will null and void the concept plan as well as the development plan they didn't get done?
Correct. Start all over unless they request an extension and is granted an extension from the city council before the expiration
But it
transpires.
will also null and void the concept plan.
Yep, so start all over.
And what we normally see, just to clarify, we don't want to be harsh on any of these. If someone is actively moving forward in this, that's the spirit and the intent of this, is to keep them moving forward. And that's very common. If they're moving forward, we work with them. They slowly go through the process. But there's other subdivisions like Buzzy brought up, where they work really hard, they get a phase in, and then they're done. They don't do anything else, and they haven't done anything for 10 or 15 years. That's really what you want to prevent. You don't want them to just sit and just wait forever, because then it just caused the city more heartache, and they'd have to figure out what to do, what was approved 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, and then you get grandfathered in indefinitely too, without any sort of changes.
You have to figure
So-
out what language was applicable back when they were going through the process. You have to kind of look between the lines and what ordinance may or may not have been passed in the meantime. For multi-phase projects, we do have language currently in our ordinances that say you have to record a phase each year to progress through if it's a multi-phase project. Or extensions can be granted as well. If it takes them 2 years between phases, then they can make that known to us. And again, if they're working in good faith with us and they've got agreements in place, then obviously that shows goodwill, good faith towards completion.
I think it's good, Scott. Hats off to you and the planning commission. And I'll make a motion that we approve amending ordinance North Logan Municipal Code Section 12D.
Okay, motion
Second.
by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, consider an approval of a list of city property to declare as surplus.
I can go through this really quick. Dathan got this ready for us. We were with Jordan on this and all the different departments. About once or twice a year, they'll go out to all the different departments and say, do you have property that you need to declare as surplus? And surplus property is basically anything that's valued over $50 that we want to get rid of. The city no longer has a use for it. Or it's above 3% of the original purchase price. So those are the two provisions. That's what we're looking at. So Dathan went out and as part of facilities, asked all the different departments if they have anything that meets these two criteria. And then we put them forward to the city council for your consideration, whether or not you want to declare them as surplus. Once they're declared as surplus, they still have to go through a bidding option that Scott Bennett coordinates as part of the recorder that goes out to the public to solicit bids for these items. Real property goes through a different process, a lengthier process that you guys were part of in the past weeks. But this one is more property, just general property that the city owns. So what you're looking at here is a Chevrolet Impala. This is actually an old police vehicle. It was passed down to the city offices that they used. And now it's basically kind of run its course. It's really not very viable as a city. It's not reliable enough to send an employee to like Brigham City or something. And at that point, it's just not reliable enough. Parks, that's a mower. That's a stand-on mower. We've had that for several years. It's run its course as well, but someone could have use of it. And then the city office, this is the old server. So these three items, as you look at them, they put together kind of an estimated price, and that's what they go out and they try and seek that for those items.
Okay, any discussion on this? Then I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the property and declare it as surplus.
All right, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. All right, number 5, consider the implementation of instant runoff voting. I know that we've had a pretty extensive conversation about this, including Damon Can coming in and kind of explaining it. My sense from the council is that we're mostly in favor of this. Is there any other discussion that you guys want to have on this or add anything from the staff? I know that we're trying to, if we're going to do this, we kind of need to adopt it early so that we can educate. I think that's going to be a really big component of this.
What's the latest?
Yeah, what's the timeline as far as when we need to declare? And
Yeah.
when you're locked in?
Sorry,
Scott's coming
No,
back.
I don't know why it's.
Scott put this together. If you look up on the board, and he's gonna go over this and clarify this. Scott's the expert about instant runoff voting.
So we have to notify the lieutenant governor and Cache County by May 1st. But I also have to put out a notice for candidates to file It'd be kind of nice to put some information in there about it, which they have to file during the first 7 days of June. And so it'd be nice to put it out there 3 to 4 weeks in advance of that. And I need to prepare the candidate packets and
Do we have to call it instant runoff voting
Yeah, is that the new name?
or can we say ranked choice?
no, the legislative name is instant
Oh,
runoff voting.
did that change?
That just sounds a little bit more impulsive, right?
The last line on there is also key.
What was it?
Ranked
That
choice.
if you approve to move forward with it and we notify the lieutenant governor, that's up to the council of the mayor. However, we also have to notify them if we don't want to. So it's not like we're notifying them
Yeah,
and
you
saying
can
we
opt in
can't
now,
opt out.
and then in April decide, no, we want to go through a traditional and opt out.
Okay,
Both, we have to notify them that we're opting in by May 1st, but we also have to tell them that we've decided to opt out by May 1st.
okay. So, any discussion on this? We've kind of beat this horse, I think, enough. I think that the biggest factor for me is just the cost savings. So,
Yeah, I wasn't here last time. I agree with the cost savings. Then I'll just add, it would be really nice not to see all those campaign signs out in June. So.
mine were
know.
really nice, Buzzy.
Well, except
Actu-
for the mayors. Some of ours are a little immature and stupid.
I like that too. So
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we implement the instant runoff voting.
All right. Motion by Craig, second by Buzzy. All in favor?
I-
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
So
Thanks.
just one, sorry, Mayor. So how are we planning on educating this? Because I know there's some bad press, on it. How are we do we have a plan to get in front of it for our residents?
Yeah.
We have a committee and Buzzy is the chair of that committee.
I can't because there'd be.
You're
conflict of
running.
interest this year. Okay.
Since you're going to be.
No, I
Actually,
didn't commit to that either.
There's quite a few online resources that I think would be really good to
So we'll put it
utilize.
in the newsletter, we'll put links to what happened last time the ranked choice voting was used. So that they can kind of see how things are
Could we?
redistributed.
I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago. Could we use one of our city council meetings for an open house for that? Almost like a public hearing where it's very well marketed, come and then have somebody present. I don't know
That'd
if it's
be-
county auditor, or if it's Damon, but
Damon said that he would come back.
Yeah, Damon offered his support in any way on this, and I think we'll probably have to utilize that. So I think given that we have quite a bit of time over the next 5 months, let's have some discussions about how best to do that. I think we're gonna have to work hand in hand with like our communications interns at, going through social media, obviously newsletter, but I think an open house is great. Alan, you mentioned, I think that sometimes the vendor will do that. Is that a possibility?
Yes, we can ask a vendor to come up at any time. However, I personally, and this is up to the council and the mayor, I really like the idea of Damon coming in
Mhm.
because he doesn't have an agenda.
Mhm.
He's not
Yeah.
making any money off this. He does not have any leanings one way or the other. He's like a computer that comes in and tells us the pros and cons of ranked choice voting. is basically what he does.
Are there multiple vendors or is there just one?
We've had one come to city council. I think it's Morgan and May is
But-
the name of.
Yeah.
the
Cache County
firm.
has the software, which we will probably.
Yeah.
We'll see the contract from Cache County, hopefully within the next 2.5 months
Okay,
or less.
well, can you kind of, Scott,
And they have the software, their software can do either traditional or
oh, okay.
instant runoff voting. They just have to tell it that our city, which way it's going.
Okay, can you maybe help us just put a pin in that will maybe spearhead that with Damon, an open house that maybe where Damon can just explain it to whoever's concerned. I think that there are certain components of our population that they're concerned about this, but I think that we can, as long as we kind of talk it through, we can really address some of those concerns.
Okay.
But my just anecdotal feedback is that people are really willing to do this and that they like that cost savings as well. So, and if you guys are willing to be the guinea pigs, the three
Are
up
you
for
ready? I
reelection.
know Roger's running. He can declare tonight.
I gotta make sure my marriage can last through.
Okay, we're gonna Marie, please take that off the minutes.
If we lose, we can just blame it on Rachel. So-
Right. Okay, thanks, Scott. All right, we'll move on to our work session items. The first is discussion regarding annual strategic directives from the mayor and city council. Alan, did you get a ton of feedback from the city council on these?
Let's see. I did. The
Alright.
mayor and Buzzy and Emily did a fantastic job.
Okay,
You
I
got
just want it to
mine,
be
right?
stated right now that I'm pretty sure Buzzy did these while we were sitting here.
No, maybe.
That's probably,
Okay.
it's irrelevant as long as we've got it. You got mine, right, Alan?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking at these for the first time. I was just hopeful that you guys would fill them in. But I didn't want you to cheat. Cheating would be looking at this, the action items. And you already have this, the city council already has strategic directives that we've gone over with status updates on each one. It's pretty lengthy and we've probably accomplished, I'd say about 75% of these goals going through here, or at least we're well on our way towards accomplishing them. The reason I've sent this out is because usually if you have a long list like that, it's almost impossible to accomplish everything. We're getting close though.
That's
But
how you
it's-
work your way out of a job.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to do like 3 goals from each and really focus on what you really want to accomplish. If you're running for re-election, you better have some good goals. But looking down through here, these kind of tie into some things that we're talking about tonight. They're also kind of overlapping with some goals that we've got in our strategic directives. But I didn't know if each of you wanted to just maybe just point on out a couple that you've listed here. And the other members,
I
if
can
you
add a
just
couple.
maybe list 1 or 2 that you'd really want to accomplish. Mayor, we can probably start with you if you want.
Sure.
for that.
So I think one of my biggest ones is thinking about Main Street. And that's something I know that the planning commission has been talking about since I started serving on there. I'm not trying to imply that I started it, but I know that discussion's been ongoing for a really long time. But I just want to prioritize that. I think it could really change the direction of North Logan. The communication one, that's been something that I think is kind of ongoing. But I know we do have some surveys in the works right now. And I think both of these kind of point to the revamping of our general plan, which I believe we have scheduled for this year. So, and I thought Emily, at least one of yours is kind of addressed by that too. So, communication, that is kind of just continuing with some of the other things that we've done, really trying to figure out the best way to communicate with citizens. I want to make sure that we have transparency there, that, and I think we've done a good job this year in terms of like when we did the tax increase, that we don't hide from that, we just shine a light on everything that we do so that there's as much input as possible. And then the water one, that's not a very exciting one, but it's a real priority. I think that it's been taking up a lot of resources to try and, limp by until we have that in place. But yeah, that's one that's really on the forefront of my mind. So Buzzy, you want to go?
I think this is perfect because you did all the serious stuff and I did all the play stuff.
That's
So,
good.
did you
So
notice that?
chocolate milk every day for lunch.
Yeah.
In your reelection.
I was doing some research over the Christmas break, and 15,000 around Utah seems to be a magic number of residents when cities start entertaining serious expansion to their recreational opportunities, something like a rec center. I know we've had a few residents that have been pushing this. So you and I talked about a few weeks ago, Alan, and it just got me starting to look through what other cities have done in Utah, and 15,000 is the number. And it'd be nice to start considering this. And when I say a community center, if you've ever been to like Washington City in the St. George area, or Lehigh has a really good one, Pleasant Grove. These are buildings that have, 5 or 6 basketball courts, pickleball indoors, racquetball, and most importantly, and probably for most residents, is indoor pool, lazy river, water slides. Obviously, it's something that the community would have to approve and be willing to bond for. But I happened to be in Utah County and spoke with the manager of the Provo Recreation Center, which is way above what we would do. But he did mention that the financial growth from memberships was far and above 300% of what they anticipated. So they're going to pay off that bond very early. And it's because so many people outside of the city use that as well. So that's one on there. The other one, and we've talked about this a lot, but 1600 East, more and more used now, certainly a danger with how narrow it is, and a lot of people recreating on that in the morning and evening. So would be nice to look at what options are there. And I don't know if that's something we can pursue with the county for some funding there through RAPS. And the third one, it's again, I was driving through here just the other day and school had picked back up, and 2500 North and 800 East is crazy again. And so it's crazy every day of the week because you got a couple churches there on Sunday. And so it'd be nice to move on that.
Just a couple updates on number one and number three. Number one, we've had earnest discussions, so we're gonna have to loop you in on that, Buzzy. 'Cause
Okay.
we've talked about some of those key items, meaning to get your input, because you're right in line with what residents are requesting and they're talking about right now. The first items we'd go through is how much can we get donated? Because usually bonding is your last resort. But you end up getting to that point if you want a really large recreation center, but it's something that we're going to have to look into. We already have the most amount of recreation in Cache Valley, which is a good indicator that it would be viable. But we'd look through feasibility studies along those same lines to make sure that it is going to work. I think we're located in a place where Jesse provides such a high quality and a high level that everyone from throughout the county and into Franklin County comes to use our resources here.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a point I was thinking through is the fact that we do have such a massive recreational program and it's ran so well gives us, I think, a competitive advantage in this space. And so I just wonder where the citizens of North Logan would probably have to brunt the costs on a bond, but how much revenue do we generate outside of that? If we do pay it off quicker, our residents are paying less, right, for those memberships, and just something to start marketing.
That's
and
a
thinking
good
through.
point. Because I think some of the limitation is that we're building city offices in a community center, the one attached to the library, with donations. And so that's been kind of a blockade a little bit because we've already kind of tapped out some of those bigger donors. But so maybe that's something that we can get a temperature on, if you really want a pool, would you be willing to bond for it? Because, if I certainly wouldn't, insist on that, but if that is something that people really feel strongly about and are willing to pay for, then we can talk about it. And maybe we can figure out, what that looks like,
And if you're going countywide to make things viable, because everyone does come and use, that's why it's called the Cache Recreation Complex. And a lot of that money came from RAPS accordingly. That's countywide. And so if you're looking at that, some of your funding sources might be the county, they might be USU, they might be some of these other entities that would love to come and utilize these features. You put in, we can talk about that and go over each and every level. I think it does have legs. The one thing that we can look at too is just literally reaching out to these other rec centers, which we've already started discussions with Provo, Washington City. I'm glad you listed both of those. South Davis, Lehigh, those are all ones that are run very efficiently, is what they're known for. And so looking at those and then seeing what their budget is, where does their revenue come from? How are they doing this? And
they gave a pretty good sneak peek 2 weeks ago. I didn't know you were already doing this. I should have.
No, it's perfect.
Bad thing. I mean, I'll just be totally transparent. Provo built theirs for like $40 million. It's like 110 million now to do the same
For
thing,
sure.
So, but maybe things balance out here and interest rates are high. And maybe the next couple of years things balance a little bit. But anyway,
yeah, we look
Cool.
into something that's reasonable for us.
Yeah.
But the other, just a really quick update: 2500 North 880 for $850,000. Let's go back to that. There we go. Sorry. That grant is a federal grant that's administered through UDOT. And so we've just been in contact with UDOT for the past year, and they finally reached back out and said, hey, we're ready to move ahead. So it's a slow process. And what I mean by move ahead is start doing some preliminary designs, reaching out to the residents. We've already reached out to all the residents on the corner, and we would have to just implement those discussions into the designs moving forward. But yes, ironically, it was 2 weeks ago or a week ago that they just finally reached out. In the next week and a half, we'll have a meeting with them, kind of a kickoff meeting to start going down that lengthy process. Get that in. And then I don't know, Mayor, where we want to bounce around.
So
to.
Emily, let's have you do yours and then we'll jump to those two.
Yeah, I kind of just was thinking about the things that had been most most pressing to me, and I just was thinking our current city center zoning, and I really think the master plan will take care of most of that. I just don't think it's suiting the needs of our city now because some things have changed. So just kind of to look of like what we want in the future and what we want it to look like. And then I would really like to at least look into what potentially expanding the pumpkin walk would look like. I think it could create a better identity for North Logan. Because that is one thing I did notice this year, that I think our identity is tied a little bit too much to a city to the south. And I think we're separate from them, and I'd like us to have a more clear identity. And then I just truly think education across our social media, whatever we're doing, just really pumping it up, because I think the more people understand when you walk them through it, the less they complain. And yeah, anyway, mine are pretty simple. So
Yeah, I think that's great. You never communicate too much. So I like the
That's my
initiatives
thought.
that the mayor, Emily, and everyone has put together in those regards. Maybe we could jump to Roger and Craig.
Well, mine was kind of for quite a while. And I'm really happy this year with what we've done with water. The only thing I would love to see, and I know you keep saying we're trying to get money, but the transportation lines across. I mean, that's where I think just even looking more forward, I just think that you can't do enough. I just think the way that we have a little slow right now for maybe 5-6 months, but it's going to take off again. And so I do like both how the mayor and Emily said that infrastructure. I think that's where I think there's so many people who they're concerned, like, well, what's the long term of this? Do we have enough? And maybe even more talk about, I mean, I read some article that said, this was Canada though, wasn't it? They just said no more, development. I mean, it's different, but I'm just saying at some point, until we have that, and I know we have that in the code where it says they can't provide enough water, but we have enough code, but I'm just saying it'll pick back up. The demand to come here is, I just want to make sure that everything's in place infrastructure wise, and then code wise to have good, well-planned growth, so that's, because we kind of have that moment. We have that moment now where it's kind of stopped with the interest rate so high that it's slowed. But as soon as they're projecting they'll go back to 5.5, you're going to start seeing it again. And it is picking up, There was 350 homes for sale on the MLS, and it's down to 250. So 100 homes have sold in 2 months. So they're still coming and they're still building. You talk to all the builders, it's still, and it's usually slow this time anyway. So and it sounds like we're doing that because we get new code. I mean, all these code changes that we're updating, it's good, but I just think we need to continue plugging, I guess you say, through the boring stuff to make sure that we're ready for the next big, growth spur,
Wonderful.
Craig, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll just throw one in there. And like all these others are great, and we've made just great strides, especially in our water. We're doing with the additional water tanks and wells and all these things that we're going. It seems like we've got them going. We just need to push them over the top. The one I would add on there that hasn't been mentioned is just to continue the development of our cemetery in moving that over to the secondary water. And so we're not using our culinary water for that, and continue to develop some facilities there at the site for the machinery, where we got to bring everything up and down from the shop. But I've been involved in that cemetery board for quite a few years. So just to continue as we have the financial means to develop the cemetery, and what great roots it gives our community to have that facility there, and what a good facility that is. So I would just add something or go along those lines.
I had a veterans monument. I didn't mean to put that in there, but I think you mentioned that last time in our strategic directives. So we'll put that in there as well.
Okay, thank you. I think that's I think a really helpful discussion. Just, it seems like we overlap a lot, which is a good sign, I think. And Alan, hopefully that's helpful in terms of just kind of helping us prioritize.
Yeah. It ties into the next item.
Oh, good.
Money.
All right, money. What do we have money for? Okay, so are we, anything else before we move on? We good? Okay, then we'll move on to overview of department head budget proposal schedule.
This, it's the same process each year. And we've experimented with other discussion points as to how to go about this. We've basically trimmed it down. I remember when I started with the city, we would do, each department was about a half an hour to 45 minutes, maybe an hour presentation for each department. That would come and present, and it would take up the vast majority of the city council, just each department. Now, I think the budget's a lot more clear. So when you look at the budget, you know what they're requesting. You can see last year and this year, you see what the changes are. And so it's meant to be more of a discussion when they come in to say, what if anything is a major change coming from last year to this year? What is a learning point where they didn't know about it? And what do they want to change based off of what you guys just described with your goals and strategic directives? Is there something they should be putting their money towards at a higher priority? Is there a trail on 16th East that we should put above something else? Is there the pumpkin walk? Should we be putting or allocating more money towards that? Those types of things we just discussed through. And even the cemetery is a perfect example. It's a very minimal budget, but there's key aspects where you have to know what you're planning for in that budget. So this is just a really quick overview to see if you're supportive of this process. They've talked about doing just one meeting where we go through budget straight for one meeting. In my opinion, it gets a little too overwhelming for 1 or 2 meetings. So we kind of just take off bits and pieces where you give 5 to 10 minutes per each of these departments in several different council meetings. Per state code, we have to have a draft budget approved by the first meeting in May. That can be a draft. It doesn't have to be perfect, and that's usually how it is. And then our final budget has to be approved in one of the 2 meetings in June. And so this is just a general overview. I just wanted to get your thoughts. If you have any suggestions, modifications.
So how much, I keep forgetting, how much time have you, when you're directing them with the outline, how much time have you been giving them? Meaning, I know it depends on the size.
It depends on the department. Some of these are really complex.
Yeah.
When you get to parks, streets, police, facilities, ironically, is very complex just because of the way it's set up. That's why it's one of the last ones, because it depends on the other departments above it and what they're doing. Other departments like economic development, I know that Scott's very wordy, but his budget's like 5 different lines and it's pretty easy to go through. But certain budgets are a little bit easier to go through. So I usually just tell them 5 to 10 minutes, give a presentation, really go over the things that are changing, be very transparent and deliver about what you say in those. Like if you're changing a budget line item by 50%, touch on that. Don't try and hide it in any way. Make sure the council's aware of that. And that's usually the direction I give them when they come in.
So Chief Goodrich, what we learned in police commission, is that aligned still with meeting the deadlines that are required there?
Yes.
Okay, that's the only question I had. So we had a lengthy discussion about that at last month's police commission.
And we can and should make some changes after May 3rd. That's the draft budget, and the department heads should be thinking about that. And then we would bring those before council again. Like we don't want any hidden changes between May 3rd and June. We would bring those and fully explain anything that's changed between the draft and final budget.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, I think that's good. Do we need to formally adopt that, or we're just talking about
No,
it?
you're just talking about it. It's just
Okay.
a discussion item. I just wanted to bring it before you. In the past, certain council members have requested changes, but it sounds like everyone's probably on board. And
Yeah,
maybe next year after you go through this, Emily and Joni, when she's here, if you have recommendations, we can change it.
Well, they went through it last year.
yeah, we've done it.
Okay.
And
This
we
is my
flipped
second
through it.
time and
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah.
Last year was the smoothest I can ever remember. I
Really?
don't think we ever hung on. It seems like we got through them quicker. Don't you think, Raj? I mean, it was like,
They were pretty easy. I don't
Yeah.
know. There weren't a lot of questions.
I just skipped over everything.
maybe that's what it was.
Well, this year will be extra thorough. Okay. Let's talk about discussion regarding a proposed draft citizen satisfaction survey. Alan, do you want to just give the background?
Yeah, this is a really, really rough draft. It'll probably take some modification. It's some cities do these annually, which we might want to look into annually or every other year might be good. And you want to keep it brief and you want to give an award for those that fill it out or a drawing. Basically just get some feedback. We've made some changes. The city council has made some changes. A lot more communication has taken place. But it basically just goes through and talks about some of the changes and basically how you rate a lot of the services the city is providing. And then really just seeks input. When you're talking about 200 to 300 people that may respond, you can do open-ended questions. Now, if we're gonna have 1,000 people that respond, we will only do like multiple choice or something else. But the most valuable input you will get is from people that just write a sentence. They'll say, well, this is what I don't like, or this is what I like. And so that's kind of why this is set up this way. It's very rough though. It needs some work, but in the coming month, this might be something that we'll look at sending out. So maybe I'll send it out to the council again. You guys look through it. If you have questions or concerns or questions you want to add, take away, have at it.
One comment from surveys that we're doing with HR at work, when you scroll up,
Yeah.
it's not, this is my opinion, it's not best to lead with information about how you feel, even if it's true. So like, if you go to the park one is a great one. North Logan boasts the most parkland, and that's probably not a great one. Go down to like plow, or even though these are true statements, I agree. A good survey does not lead the witness.
I put them in
So-
there and I already pointed it out to the mayor that they're overly awkward.
Okay, okay. Just
Uh,
ask and, leave it be that, since we want an honest opinion.
Yeah.
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 That's fine. I did that because I'm defensive. That's why I put that in. Like some people come in.
in the world. Do you agree?
Do you have any problems? If you do, that's weird because we're the best.
One of the problems we used to have, people used to come into the city all the time and they'd say, North Logan has no parks. We need way more parkland. And they come in. So we finally looked into it. Ironically, we have the most in the city, not the least, or even just a mediocre amount, the most per capita in the state of Utah. And so they need to keep that in mind, however we want to improve. Yeah, I thought they were awkward though. So we'll just nix it out and just say, what do you want to improve? What do we need to add? What do you want to change about these departments?
And maybe in line with what Buzzy was talking about with the pool facility, maybe we can like elaborate on, would you be willing to bond for this? Or
That's what I was thinking, that it's just more direct.
Could we,
Would you be willing to pay?
this is gonna sound maybe stupid,
I
but
think
could we
it's fair.
ask the amount that they would potentially be willing to bond for it? Like,
I think that's just hard because it's like, I think like, what do you mean, like the overall amount? Like, would you pay 10 million?
like, would you pay, my thought is like, would you be willing to have an increase on your taxes of this
40
amount?
per year on an average home of 250.
That, something like that, or like giving them like some numbers, because knowing like, oh, people are not going to be willing to spend more than $5 extra on this gives us a lot of information versus people who are like, actually, I'd be more willing to pay $50 a year. Just like ranges a little bit on
Well,
like.
and maybe what we can do, I
That's what I
just,
meant,
I get nervous
guess.
about like backing ourselves into a corner on like, on amount, but maybe we can give them like a short answer where you can say,
Yeah.
How much?
if you would, and then like, any elaboration on amount.
If we could, I don't know if it would work, and I'm not good at doing surveys. I don't
We can
know.
kind of finesse it, but I think it'd be
Yeah,
good
something like
to,
that, just
We can
to,
think through that together. I bet we can come up with something. Also, Alan, do we have any bonds that we're currently, I should probably know, that we're currently carrying that are close to?
We're debt free.
For a hot second.
That actually hurts in this case, because if you're already carrying one, then you just say, hey, we just would carry through. You're already paying this. Now we'll put it towards.
We're debt
Another
free, but
service.
by next year, we will have a
Sewer, water.
bond, a water bond, and then our
That's also what we wanted.
CIB bond
I
for
know.
the library.
I think we need to be clear, if we are going to ask people to bond for this, that we need to be
Here's
clear
everything
about our
coming.
water infrastructure. I do not want to give
One
a
thing's clear,
false idea.
just to bring up each one of those bonds, those aren't GO bonds, right? General obligation bonds or anything else. All of our bonds are being paid through existing.
Yeah,
fees or
Yeah, so
funds.
we're
that's,
not increasing.
We have an
anything to
increase of
collect on
what
those bonds.
Buzzy was talking
Yeah.
about. If you go up for rec bond, it would be an increase. It would be something that they would talk about.
Yeah.
And what Emily brought up, yes, how much would you be willing to pay in a given annual property tax?
and that's a
bill?
key distinction in my opinion. People, if we do it right, shouldn't know that we're paying off a sewer bond,
Yeah.
that'll just be dedicated fees through
Yeah.
sewer.
We
but-
would have to be, oh, sorry to interrupt you, Mayor.
No.
We would have to be very careful. I know cities in Utah County have amazing features in their cities, and I have cousins and nieces and nephews that grew up in these areas that have amazing facilities in their city. That when the proposal was put to the residents, they paid like a GO bond, and they said that their kids would get in for free. indefinitely.
Yeah, we don't.
And then all of a sudden it's
Working
$10 every time they go in. And so we want to be very upfront, very transparent and plan for the worst case scenario. We would never want to make a statement that you'll never pay a dime for these things. When in reality, they probably will for a rec center or something.
I don't know anybody that's, even if they bonded, they still pay a membership fee. I mean,
Mhm.
I was gonna
but
say
it's
though,
cheap, you know, well,
So
relatively.
like the library,
Cheap
they
for
don't-
residents,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like a family of 6 at Pro, I think was 300 a year.
Yeah.
that's very
So-
reasonable.
That is. for
Actually, that
that.
might have been too high. I think that might have been their non-resident cost.
Gosh,
So-
that's still very reasonable.
Well, and this,
though.
what you get there is,
Yeah,
But like the
know.
library had a quasi geo bond, a
Yeah.
library specific tax, but there was no fee to come to the library
Right.
specifically. So those are the two polar extremes.
Okay.
that's a good point.
But yeah, I can add these in. I'll send it out to the council. Please respond with an email that says, because this is really this is a very rough draft that.
How do you
needs some
send that
work.
out? Is it through the newsletter or how do they get it?
We would send out through the newsletter, social media, everything, even a parliament message that would go
I
out
was
to the
gonna say,
residents.
that would be a
It
good
though,
briefing.
the
just-
newsletter, the one thing that makes it hard with the newsletter is you put like the link in and that would require somebody to go in and type it all in.
Mhm.
So if there's
can-
way,
We can shorten the link. There's ways to go in and shorten the. link.
okay, that would be one, but I would also like, any way we can get it
a
email.
paper copy.
Parlance is awesome because then you can link
Text
right
it
to your
out.
phone and
Yeah.
yeah, you've got the
I
survey
was
up.
gonna say that would
Yeah.
be, like, anything we can do to just
Yeah.
make it so you just have to click link.
You are.
Yeah, we can do QR codes, but yes, the email through Parliament is probably the easiest. One click is what people want, like if they're gonna fill out a survey.
Yeah,
The other thing that we'll have to work on and that we'll probably keep out of this survey in general. I start putting some community development because that's what a lot of these other surveys have in them. Well, those cities aren't redoing their entire general plan that
Yeah.
year. And it kind of muddies the water. We could get some feedback, but there'll be better questions in the general plan process specific to community development.
Okay.
We need that Scott will put together that we
Okay.
can put into that survey.
so we'll kind of focus on other aspects in
General
this one,
services
and then
in the
we'll
city.
wait for that.
I did get one feedback when I was going through. A lot of people felt like they would do these surveys and then they really didn't feel like they got a lot of the information. Like, well, what were you using the information for? Or, because truly, I think a lot of people, if they were like, oh, most people really did care about this. Like, so if there's a way we can make a cute little infographic after of like, we did the survey, here's the information we found. I think that would really help people see like,
Kind of
where
like the health
everybody
and
else is.
wellness survey. We
Mhm.
put that in the newsletter for 2 months after that with the QR code. So the exact same.
yeah,
thing.
something like that. That would be great.
Okay,
If it could look cute, I'd appreciate that.
all right. Emily is heading that committee of cute infographics.
And
You don't,
Scotty,
I cannot draw, so please don't put me in charge of that.
Okay, I think that's great. And yeah, I encourage everyone to just kind of look this over. I think, Alan, I think you've taken, like, that's the hardest part, right? Is the rough draft. And I think it's in good shape, but we can modify it. Okay, let's move on to updates regarding North Logan's water capital improvement projects. Who's taking that on today? Is that you?
I'll take that on. And Jordan's not here tonight. I know that he's been working extremely hard on this. Like I said, we're drilling the well in the next few weeks. The bids for the well house will come in next week. They kind of took the break off, but there's the difficult part in bidding a well house is you're asking for a pump. It's a 200 to 300 horsepower pump that's specific to a well. And so it's very difficult to get that exact component in there. And so that's why the bids are taking about a week and a half longer than we'd anticipated.
Yeah.
And we gave all of the bidders that same luxury to say, hey, this is tough. Take another week and a half to get that. The anticipation is that the well will be done at the end of January, early February, and that we would start the well house shortly after that. So building that well house on site to be equipped and up and running by this summer. Problem is that we probably won't have the reservoirs completed or well on their way by that time, but at the same token, it's another source. We just don't have the batteries to put it into. Reservoirs are also known as a battery, just a storage device where you can put the water and charge everything overnight and then go right back into the system. But we will most likely be well on our way towards that as well with the loan that we've applied for, that we're working on. And also the federal grants that we're looking into as well, that would just go and subsidize whatever loan or bond that we go into.
Okay, any questions on that? All right, let's move on to updates on the Civic Center.
So they basically had to take a week off during the Christmas and New Year's. But they've got most of the water line in. They've piped the vast majority of the canal for the process. The next steps, they get all the underground utilities over to the site and start pouring the footing and foundation to the building.
And I believe we'll have our first meeting on site tomorrow, right?
Yes, is that on site?
I don't know.
Don't they have a trailer out there?
They do have a trailer
They
out
do have a
there.
Trailer, better have a good heater. As good as this room.
Just open the doors and the heat will drift
Yeah.
out there into the trailer.
No, we should remind me about that, Lindsay. And then we'll finalize several things regarding the council room, specific details, audio, visual, and then the interaction of the lobby. It's more difficult than you'd imagine coming up with a lobby that's balancing safety of employees with customer service and care. It's very hard. It's probably the hardest part of the entire city office so far, is coming up with something that works really well.
But I think that, again, kudos to Alan, because I think he's been really exhaustive about those kinds of considerations and looking to other types of businesses, other city offices, to make sure we kind of strike that balance. I think we're in a good place with that as well.
Yeah.
It looks like that is at Londell's, so I lied. We won't be on site tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay,
Those are updates unless you have other updates, Mayor, to add.
I think that's it, as far as I know.
Okay.
Okay, then we will move on to reports from city officers, boards and committees. Chief, you want to start?
Okay. So this week, of course, was a holiday week. We had 4 officers that were working during the week to cover the morning shift, the swing shift, and the grave shift through that. So with this week, we ended up taking 87 calls that those 4 handled with sick and vacation and everybody requesting time off, as well as making traffic stops. And so they had 36 stops on top of that. So considering the week, our numbers were down a little bit, but it was still a busy week for the 4 that we had that were out there. Other things that we're looking at coming up. We have done the 2 presentations for the fraud. I think we mentioned that this last time, and that's starting to get out. We're starting to get requests for that. And then events we have coming up on the 1st of February, we have an active shooter training to North Logan City for the workplace training that we're going to do there. We're looking at that. And then also in February 8th and 9th, we're putting on that drone class. We have Jordan that's coming to that. That's a big one for the PD. That's the first time that the PD has hosted an event like that in a long time. And so we're starting to see that that interest there. Other things that we're working on right now, as far as updates, we've had 1 officer who resigned during this week as well. He and his family have decided to move out of law enforcement altogether and pursue other items. And we have also hired one today, another officer today. So we were almost full staff and now we're not. So we still have 1 full-time position that's open. This lady that we have hired is from Puerto Rico. She's been here 5 years. She lives in North Logan, and before we hired her, we had her do some ride-alongs with us. And she ended up putting in about 80 hours of time of her own time, just writing and taking notes and trying to get better at communication and things like that. So she's in it for the right reason, and we can train her on some of the other things. So we're kind of excited for her on that. The other things, we are looking at our website for an update. That a lot of our issues the links for those were really outdated. Some of them even back to Kim Hawks when they had some of his applications and things in there. So I'm like, yeah, we need to do some updates. So we're kind of trying to update and then work on our budget and get that together for the schedule that was presented. So that's kind of where we're at for right now.
Okay, thanks, Chief, and really appreciate your proactivity with, establishing our presence in the community and getting cost savings too. So thank you.
And let your new officer know there's someone on staff that's fluent in Spanglish. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Lucky us.
Puerto Rican Spanglish. Clarify that.
She'll be a good asset for the community. I think there's a need for people to be able to speak to somebody in their native tongue there. So it'll be good.
We have commission tomorrow night, right? Did I see that? Okay.
It is 6:30.
Okay, thank you. All right, Scott. Scott? Alan?
Just a list of upcoming events. Just one question. So sorry, I didn't mix these out. Sports Sampler, NFL Combine, New Year's at noon. I guess they had 475 people for the New Year's at
Holy
noon.
cow, that's
It
awesome.
was an amazing event. I was only able to attend for like 15, 20 minutes. My daughters were all mad at me because we had to leave really fast. But they had endless arts and crafts and games going on. And then they had a countdown going that they'll probably post online to noon. And thanks to the high school for helping out with that as well. It was just really well put together. NFL Combine, several people attended that. That was pretty fun. The library gala and the Tea Party gala are coming up this month. The one thing I wanted to bring up with the city council though, after all these big events are coming through, is the tour of the HSC, similar to what we did with the treatment plant. I was wondering if February 6th or 7th, I talked with Jesse, and he said that February 6th or 7th at noon. So if we just did a brief lunch and then just a tour and he talks about what's going on in the facility. If that works for any of you, do either of those dates work better? February 6th is a Monday, February 7th is a Tuesday.
I can make either of them work.
Same.
Same. Stay off Wednesday.
Do you want to pick one and I'll just tell him and then he can reserve it in the schedule?
I
The
like
6th is
Tuesday.
better for me.
Yeah, let's do Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do 6th on that one. I'll let Jesse know. It'll be good. You get to see kind of all the things that they go through on a day-to-day, everything that like, because not every one person is involved in every single rec program that's going on. It's nearly impossible. But there's so many things going on and he can go over each of those at a kind of slower time of the day at noon.
And if you haven't been there for a little bit, they have now painted on a kickball little field, which was a huge hit with my children when we went to open play. So,
Yeah, it's not painted on,
sorry, excuse me.
cut out and sewn in.
Wow.
You have
Never
to,
mind.
you have to sew the lines in the turf.
Is
I-
the gala on the 27th Regency dress as well? Or is that just more, I don't really have nice
27th
clothes.
is the formal gala at the Riverwoods.
But it's like tuxedo formal. What does formal mean in 2023?
It does mean
It means
formal
like
enough.
1800s formal. Is my understanding.
I think a suit
Isn't it
is
Jane
fine.
Austen book
I
formal?
don't even have a suit anymore. Okay, I was
What?
just curious.
We'll go to DI and.
I'm
see what we
sorry,
can
I
do.
thought we had discussed a dress code, Buzzy.
We did.
Are we not? on
But
the same
I've been
page?
confused looking at this because Regency is a specific era, right? The next
Right.
day.
Yes. Generally
But
means
it's not
gloves.
tied to the night before.
Yeah.
Are you going?
Maybe. It's either one.
Linda, any
Yeah,
input on
Linda, you're
that?
here.
Do you know?
Are you going to any of those? I know. see,
Regency
that's-
era attire encouraged. It's so
She
true.
actually, she said that to me. She's like, I don't know, Buzzy. I don't. She's like, I have Sunday dresses. I'm like, yeah, I hear you.
Oh,
Well,
I don't have a single formal
Scott has
dress.
pointed out a
so-
key point in the newsletter, which had some errors tonight, sorry. But it said that the
Encouraged. I think they would be happy to have you. So I don't think anyone's gonna get turned away.
if Linda goes, I go.
Linda, be
Pressure.
there.
If you're in, I'm in. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
It is expensive.
It's expensive, but
having my
that's
donation.
dinner and it's for a good cause. So 105 for
You guys go.
Eric will be going. He doesn't know it yet, but he's gonna be excited, I bet. I'm gonna make him a cummerbund.
A cumber.
Yeah.
yeah, both of those will be fantastic events by the library.
Yeah.
I think hopefully they're very well attended and we spread the word and get as many people there as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Okay.
And so, sorry, those are the only things I had. I just wanted to go over that. And the only other thing I had was the order for shirts and attire for the city council. Your deadline's tomorrow. So if you want
Who
a
has responded?
shirt,
Is it the same people who submitted their goals?
It's almost identical.
I just got back to town.
Listen.
That's a bad sign, Craig.
Miss Roger, even checking. You got
Okay.
saying,
Yeah, but you'll probably need one.
you guys should get one
Um,
anyway.
Yeah, and then, yeah, just get with me even after the meeting, let me know.
So that fundraising meeting tomorrow at 3:30, since Buzzy can't make her, we still have one.
Oh, yeah, I gotta go to Burley tomorrow. I
How
told
dare
Dad,
you?
Yeah, I still.
Yeah, but Lloyd's coming, so maybe us four will meet and let's go over it. We need to have that kickoff and I can loop Buzzy in afterwards because we've had one.
And
meeting.
Buzzy's kind of done his,
We're
done
doing
a bunch.
city
so.
office there.
Some of the city offices.
You say the trailer.
Okay. All right, well,
That
I,
was my only item.
okay. Any other discussion from the council? No. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to
Move
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Motion by
Second.
Craig, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thanks, everyone.
You almost made it.
Are you gonna go? You don't need to go.
No, I'm.